Part 82. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 844. Of course, an important reason for the successful signing of the Antarctic Treaty was the successful development of space-based kinetic energy weapons. This kind of kinetic energy cannon deployed in low Earth orbit is terrifyingly powerful and extremely difficult to intercept. Any occupation of ground targets will lose their meaning in the face of a cannonball of a space-based kinetic energy weapon. The war between major ZZ entities has gradually transformed from the competition for various surface fortresses into an offensive and defensive war surrounding space-based kinetic energy weapon satellites. It makes people feel a little ridiculous when talking about it. At that time, human civilization had already entered the era of space war before it even left the solar system. The form of war is always the one with the fastest development and progress among all fields. As for the outbreak of the solar crisis and the various ZZ entities abandoning their prejudices and coming together to start the construction plan of the Ark, that was already very late. Lan continued to supplement and improve this memory fragment while killing and devouring the zombies that rushed into the space barrier. He is now basically certain that this is a spaceship built by human civilization, not because the shape of the spacecraft is similar to that of human civilization, but because on the right side of the bow of the spacecraft, this ship is printed with English letters and Arabic numerals. The ship's hull number: GCY0906. The GCY at the front is not in English but the abbreviation of Chinese pinyin, which means for engineering use. This shows that this is an engineering ship rather than a warship. The hull length of this engineering ship is about 150 meters, and there is no emblem of any force on the surface. This was a very rare thing in the old era. During the Energy War, both parties involved in the war dropped a large amount of information interference in low Earth orbit. Devices, especially in some fiercely contested war zones, radio communications are almost completely unusable, and the only communication method is laser communications. However, the biggest problem of laser communications has been mentioned many times: the transmitter and receiver of the laser. There must be no obstructions between the vehicles. In low Earth orbit, which has a complex environment and is full of space junk, the restrictions are actually very high. Many times, the space forces of each participating war party rely on visual inspection to distinguish between ourselves and the enemy, and radar has become a decoration. Reconnaissance work relies more on high-speed space fighters and drones. Technology is constantly developing, but the mode of war is like going back to the European naval battles of the 18th century. In this case, it is necessary to identify the emblems on the surface of the spacecraft or battleships. The appearance of the main battleships and combat vehicles of each participating party is actually not very different. When the battle situation is tight, after capturing the enemy battleship after being slightly modified and put into the battlefield, no matter which side it is, there are a large number of warships built by other forces in the fleet. If there are no paintings or emblems used to identify the enemy and ourselves, even if they are operating in our safe zone, they will not. It is possible to be intercepted or even attacked by friendly forces. There is no identifying painting or emblem for an engineering spacecraft, then there is only one possibility: this spacecraft was built in the Ark era. In this era, the hostility between the major ZZ entities on the Earth has basically been lifted. Except for some minor frictions in some areas, all technology and resources have been tilted towards the construction of the Ark. This is an unprecedented period of unity for mankind. During this period, it doesn't matter even if there is no identifying emblem of the force to which it belongs on the spaceship. The only people who will hinder the Ark construction project are those called resistance forces, but the influence of the resistance forces is only limited to the Earth, and all channels to space are firmly controlled by major ZZ entities. With control, it will be difficult for those who resist the forces to go to space, and it will also be difficult to obtain ships or fighter planes that can launch terrorist attacks in space. Could this spaceship have been involved in the construction of Noah's Ark? Lan remembered very clearly that after the Ark set sail, a large number of people who stayed behind were not willing to be buried with the Earth. They drove the ships used in building the Ark and escaped with the remaining energy of the accelerating Stargate. The solar system, could this engineering ship be one of the many ships escaping from the solar system? No wonder even the lighting facilities inside the ship were turned off. On this kind of voyage with almost no end in sight, every bit of energy is extremely valuable, especially after being far away from the sun and trying to gain it in the dark and cold space. Energy is simply as difficult as reaching the sky. Could it be that these zombies were once escapees from this engineering ship? That's not right. Logically speaking, the possibility of these ships escaping from the solar system to survive the space voyage is basically zero. Even if they can find an impulse near the solar system and are not discovered by humans and Ark, with these the structural strength of the ship simply cannot withstand the space storm when passing through the wormhole. To take a step back, even if one ship is extremely lucky and relies on inertial navigation to reach the star field where Alpha Star is located, but at this time, there is no way that there are still people alive on the ship. Even in the end, a group of crew members decided to cryopreserve human embryos. During the long journey, the cryogenic chamber would also stop working due to lack of energy. What's more, these zombies are still wearing the uniforms of the field corps. But why? What I absorbed from these zombies was the memory of this escaped engineering ship. Is there something wrong with it, or is the trial procedure of this Tower of Babel intentional? Kaylan didn't know. He could only choose to absorb more zombies and continue to complete this memory. It seems that a long time has passed, and the engineering ship sailing in space has become more and more dilapidated. A large number of dents and holes caused by meteorites have appeared on the originally flat hull shell, and the thruster nozzles of several main engines have also become damaged. There are traces of the explosion and fire. Obviously, during the period of memory loss, this engineering ship should have encountered many unexpected situations, but at least, the entire ship has not disintegrated, and the survivors on the ship have not yet directly faced to the cold, dark space environment without oxygen and filled with deadly radiation. Another period of time passed. The survivors on the engineering ship were lucky. They found an asteroid rich in ore resources. The entire engineering ship docked directly on this asteroid with a diameter of less than 1 kilometer, autonomously. Resource collection robots were sent out to dig out a large number of mines on the surface of the asteroid. There seemed to be metallurgical engineers among the survivors. A crude smelting factory made of several metal containers was built on the asteroid. The ore mined by robots was transported to the factory, and the metal smelted was to repair the damaged hull. The light of the star comes from the distant star field. Although it is very weak, it at least solves the urgent problem of energy shortage. Foldable photovoltaic panels cover almost half of the asteroid. In the desperate situation, it seems to have ignited again. A glimmer of hope. But what makes Kaylan a little puzzled is that no human figure appears in the images in the memory fragments from beginning to end, whether it is during the voyage of the spacecraft or when it is docked on an asteroid, mining minerals and smelting metals. There is not even a single one. A human figure appears in the picture. Kaylan even had the illusion that the autonomous resource-gathering robots that mined minerals were the only living creatures on this engineering ship. P.S. Thanks to Wangle 1981 for the 100 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 845. Those who mine minerals are these autonomous collection robots, those who build smelting plants are these autonomous collection robots, and even those who repair damaged parts of engineering ships have been manually modified, added with welding guns and multifunctional robotic arms, and written new tasks programmed autonomous collection robot. As for the humans on this engineering ship, they have never appeared in this memory. But Kaylan knew that there must be living people on this engineering ship. The core authority of these autonomous collection robots prohibits them from modifying their bodies and writing new programs. This restriction is also to prevent criminals from using engineering robots modified into fully automatic killing weapons. It is not that the resistance organizations on the Earth have never done this, but all they can get are relatively low-end goods. The modified armed robots can be used in battle. The effect is far inferior to that of a real person who has only received the most basic training. As for the robot breaking the restrictions and modifying itself, Kaylan directly ruled out this possibility. If the robot can really do this, an omnic crisis has already broken out on the Earth, and even the artificial intelligence on the Ark does not have this ability. Such abilities, let alone these old-fashioned robots from 1,000 years ago. Kaylan has lost count of how many zombies he has devoured. 100, or 200. In short, the zombies outside are still pouring in continuously, and the living armor I simulated is like a bottomless pit that can never be full. I accept all the food that is delivered to my door. Incomplete, the memory fragments are being pieced together piece by piece, becoming more complete. The engineering ship docked on this asteroid for 6 full months. Kaylan didn't know what the humans on the ship relied on to survive, but in these 6 months, the asteroid was dug up close to 1/3 of the volume, and the engineering ship that was originally only 100 meters long was transformed into a 500-meter-long special-shaped airship. The appearance of this airship is very rough, or rough is not an exaggeration to describe it. It is full of a strong diesel punk style. The power pipes with pits on the surface are directly exposed to the outside of the hull, and a large number of irregular the steel plates were crudely riveted together, like an old patched piece of clothing. Not to mention the modular design that is now highly recommended, there is almost no compatibility between these newly added components, and the tolerances between parts are also horribly large. 12 giant thrusters that look like horizontal chimneys are set in a support frame made of steel pipes. Although Kaylan doubts whether this thing can provide thrust to the spacecraft, at least those connected to the thrusters are used. The power tubes that carry fuel don't look like decorations. If Kaylan was asked to use the shortest possible language to describe this alien spacecraft, it could probably be summed up in one sentence: I think this thing should be able to move. But no matter what, the fact that this group of people was able to survive in such a harsh environment and transform, no, it should be said that they built such a thing, can really only be described as miraculous. Within 6 months, all available resources on the asteroid were explored. The people on the engineering ship not only mined all the ore, but also used tens of thousands of tons of smelting residue as fuel, refined it and filled it into those big chimneys. Burning stones. Is this heavy nuclear fusion technology? You know, in the old era, the technological ceiling of mankind was just touching the threshold of controllable nuclear fusion. Even the nuclear fusion reactor on the Ark was only a so-called trial type, and the so-called heavy nuclear fusion is much more difficult than the nuclear fusion that is often mentioned in daily life. The nuclear fusion mentioned in the general population should be accurately called hydrogen fusion, which refers to the nuclear fusion of isotopes of hydrogen atoms, that is, protium, deuterium and tritium, to produce helium, and obtain a large amount of released energy in the process. The reason why we start to study nuclear fusion from hydrogen atom isotopes is because hydrogen atom is the first element in the periodic table of elements, with the smallest atomic number, the smallest number of neutrons and protons in the nucleus, and its relative atomic mass is light, which makes it the minimum initial energy required to perform fusion. In short, is the lowest threshold. For those elements that are at the back of the periodic table and are heavy in terms of relative atomic mass, although they require much more initial energy than hydrogen, the energy released during the fusion process is not comparable to that of hydrogen fusion. This is refusion is a typical high investment and high return model. But according to the technological level of human civilization in the old era, even controllable hydrogen fusion is only half-baked, let alone the extremely high threshold of refusion. Otherwise, humans would not have regarded this kind of thinking after discovering energy crystals. The energy supply method that seemed a bit primitive has been changed to the main energy supply method of the Ark. If the fusion reactor can be miniaturized and portable while achieving high stability, there is a high probability that there will be no need for energy crystallization. But because it cannot be done, this type of fusion reactor is essentially the same as a battery. Energy crystals occupy the mainstream. If the humans on this engineering ship have mastered the fusion technology, it means that their technological level is at least 500 years ahead of the current arc. No, it may even be more than 1,000 years. But on an engineering ship that was drifting in space and faced problems with survival and supplies, how could they develop fusion technology? Even eating is a problem. How can you still have the energy to do other things? What's more, there are no conditions for such experiments on the engineering ship at all. If you want to master heavy nuclear fusion technology, there are countless technical difficulties that need to be overcome. Each difficulty requires the investment of massive manpower and material resources, and the time and resources consumed are simply astronomical figures, things that even the Earth civilization of the old era, which concentrated most of the resources of the entire solar system, couldn't do. How could a small, dilapidated engineering ship do it? Kaylan stared closely at the alien spacecraft in the picture. He was waiting for the people on the spacecraft to light the 12 big chimneys. In his opinion, even if there was no explosion, the thrusters would not be able to get any output at all. P.S. Heavy nuclear fusion technology is the principle of burning rocks of the planetary engine in Deliu's Wandering Earth. The knowledge related to heavy nuclear fusion technology in this chapter basically comes from science fiction works. If there are any fallacies, please point them out, but don't take it for granted. I have to look up tens of thousands of words of dry information to write 1,000 words. I already have a headache already. PPS. Thank you to Reading Giraffe and Soputa for the reward of 1,500 starting coins. Thank you to Blue 2 for the reward of 500 starting coins. Thank you to Red Moon Demon for the reward of 100 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 846. If the initial energy provided cannot reach the threshold to trigger refusion, it will be completely useless. The end point can be reached in 100 steps. If it stops at the 99th step, it is no more than standing behind the starting line. There is no difference at all about who sets out. 99 equals 0. But after the 12 large chimneys trembled for a while, accompanied by a low roar, the alien spacecraft actually flew up tremblingly. After hovering over the debris of the asteroid for a few seconds, the tail suddenly sprayed out with a tail flame several kilometers long. The entire ship suddenly accelerated and rushed towards the dark space in the distance at a speed that was difficult to catch up with the eyes. This is impossible. Unless the people on this engineering ship have acquired technology that does not belong to Earth civilization. Did they discover the remains of an alien civilization before this? The memory about this engineering ship is constantly improving, but the fragments about the ruins of this alien civilization have never appeared. It is as if this engineering ship has been drifting in the universe after escaping from the solar system, until it encountered this. The asteroid stopped for the first time. This is unreasonable. If this engineering ship had discovered the remains of an alien civilization before and successfully obtained the technology of heavy nuclear fusion, then they would not have ended up like this. Could it be that one of the memory fragments has been deleted? Kaylan is more inclined to this possibility. After all, this is not the first time that this kind of thing has happened. Compared with other methods, deleting memories is the simplest and most effective. If there is something that you don't want to be known by latecomers like Kaylan, just go directly to it. Just delete it. With the energy provided by heavy nuclear fusion, the alien spacecraft sailed in the dark and lightless universe for an unknown number of years, only stopping a few times along the way, all of which were for the purpose of collecting data from celestial bodies in its path. Stone used as fuel for fusion. Until the spacecraft was captured by the gravitational field of a gas giant planet 6 times the diameter of Jupiter. This scene always felt familiar to Kaylan, just like how the Ark was captured by the natural wormhole hidden in the darkness in New Era 499. The only difference is that the alien spacecraft actively approaches the gas giant planet. Although Kaylan couldn't see any human crew members in the memory fragments, he could feel their thoughts. This feeling of empathy was as if he was experiencing this memory personally. After all, this memory was originally belongs to the people on this ship. The spacecraft initially approached the gas giant planet in order to use the gravitational slingshot effect to further accelerate the spacecraft. However, the people on the ship miscalculated the mass and gravity of the gas giant planet. When they discovered that the situation had changed, it was too late. The alien spacecraft plunged into the interior of the gas giant like a moth to a flame. Just when Kaylan thought that the alien spacecraft was about to be crushed by the gravity of the gas giant planet, a faint light curtain suddenly enveloped the spacecraft. As the spacecraft got closer and closer to the core of the gas giant planet, recently, circles of ripples appeared on this light curtain. As for the spacecraft itself, it was not damaged at all under the pressure of this terrifying gravity. Energy shield? No, it's not a common energy shield, it's another special shield, a special shield that can resist the gravity of gas giant planets. Energy shields cannot block gravity, and even anti-gravity devices are powerless in the face of the terrifying gravity of gas giant planets, but this shield can allow alien spacecraft to stay safe and sound inside gas giant planets. This kind of device, it has never been found even in the ruins of Alpha civilization. Could it be that, the technological level of the alien civilization relics they discovered on this engineering ship is still higher than that of Alpha civilization? Unfortunately, although this shield could prevent the spacecraft from being crushed, it could not prevent the spacecraft from escaping the gravitational field of the gas giant planet. The alien spacecraft passed straight through the atmosphere of the gas giant planet and fell into the ocean middle. The ocean here does not refer to the large area of water composed of hydrogen oxide like on the Earth and Alpha planet, but the liquid gas formed by the gas that makes up the planet is compressed under the influence of gravity. Like Jupiter in the solar system, under the atmosphere is a liquid hydrogen ocean formed from gaseous hydrogen and covering the entire star. Under this ocean, there is hydrogen compressed into a metallic state, and some phases of metallic hydrogen. For example, Jupiter's atmosphere and ocean are actually just two very thin layers. Although both Jupiter and this planet are classified as gas giants, most of these planets are actually in a solid state, gas compressed into a solid state. The special shield of the alien spacecraft can not only block the terrifying gravity of the gas giant planet, but can even push away seawater in the ocean of the gas giant planet, forming a hollow area. After traveling through the ocean for several hours, the alien spacecraft finally arrived at the seabed. Kaylan didn't know what elements made up this gas giant planet, but it was obviously not hydrogen. The seabed showed a lead gray metallic texture, and the junction was not only not blurry, but also extremely clear, as if there were it's the same as an invisible boundary. Matter above this boundary is compressed into a liquid state, and below it is compressed into a solid state. The alien spacecraft hovered about 10 meters above the seafloor, maintaining a delicate balance with the surrounding environment. The hatch at the bottom of the spacecraft slowly opened, and a mechanical arm with a drill rig fixed on the top stretched out and attached to the seafloor. The progress of the drilling was very slow, but not all was found. From these crew memories, Kaylan could learn that the metal fragments dug up by the drilling rig immediately returned to the same liquid state as seawater after leaving the seabed. It is a substance, but it exhibits completely different properties from ordinary liquid substances. Not long after, an emotion mixed with excitement and joy exploded in Kaylan's mind. The people on this spacecraft were surprised to find that the element that made up this planet turned out to be an element that did not exist on the periodic table of elements. Brand new elements. Although it is impossible to conduct a detailed analysis of this element with people's existing instruments, when they experimentally fused this new element with some known metals, they obtained an extremely superior properties of superalloys. Because the person who led the new element research experiment was called Dr. Nino, the people on the ship decided to name the superalloy after him. Nino alloy. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 847. Nanoalloy, Nanoalloy. Lan repeated the term that appeared in the memory fragment over and over again in disbelief, and his whole body froze in place. He knew very well that nanoalloy was not made by the Alpha civilization, they just cut off the finished nanoalloy from the Agunakota and used it elsewhere, and this ancient battleship was considered it was built by another more advanced civilization. Lan called it Beta civilization. But now, this memory is clearly telling Lan that nanoalloy was invented and named by humans on an escaped engineering ship. The description of the appearance and properties of this nanoalloy in the memory fragments are completely consistent with the nanoalloy that Lan and the others know, so the coincidence of the same name can basically be ruled out. Could this memory be fake? Is it specifically used to confuse yourself? No. It's not like. If the Alpha civilization has acquired this memory and knows the detailed proportioning scheme of nanoalloy, then with their technology, it is impossible not to imitate the superalloy with superior performance, but the Alpha civilization has obtained after taking control of Agunakota. He had no intention of imitating nanoalloy. Instead, he devoted all his manpower and material resources to the research of energy crystals. Why did Alpha civilization give up research on nanoalloy? Because they know that the research and development of nanoalloy is simply impossible to succeed. The key core of nanoalloy is this new element discovered by the people on this engineering ship on this gas giant planet. Without this new element, no matter how accurate the ratio of other materials is, it would be impossible to reproduce nano. No alloy comes. The Alphas knew this very well, so they did not do this useless work from the beginning. But, what is the connection between the people on the escaped engineering ship and the Beta civilization that built Agunakota? Could it be that this engineering ship was discovered and captured by the Beta civilization during the subsequent voyage, and then the Beta civilization found the gas giant planet based on the coordinates and smelting formula provided by the people on the ship, and put the new planet on it? The elements were mined in large quantities and smelted into nanoalloy, and then used nanoalloy to build a powerful fleet including Agunakota. But when the next scene emerged in Ian's mind, what he felt was more than just shock. The people on the engineering ship began to use the newly developed nanoalloy to transform the hull. This was originally an understandable thing. If you want to escape the gravity of this gas giant planet, you must combine the power of the spacecraft, and the physical strength of the hull has been strengthened to an extremely exaggerated level. The successful development of nanoalloy is as meaningful to these people as giving timely help. But as the transformation project continues to progress, Lan feels an inexplicable chill running down his spine. Climbed up. The ship is getting bigger and bigger, becoming more and more like Agunakota. So, the so-called Beta civilization does not exist at all? So, this old era geoengineering ship numbered 0906, is the predecessor of the Agunakota? This group of people who were supposed to be buried somewhere in the unknown universe miraculously survived and even arrived at Alpha Planet? Wrong. Agunakota arrived at Alpha Planet tens of thousands of years ago. At that time, humans were still in the Stone Age and had not yet mastered even the most rudimentary metal smelting technology. How could they create something that could be used in the universe? Of a spaceship that sails in China? Not to mention the spaceship, even the English letters and Arabic numerals on the spaceship had not been invented yet at that time. The timeline doesn't match up at all. Even if the variable of wormholes is taken into account, this is not possible. Through wormholes, people can only go to the future, and return to the past. That is something that can only happen in science fiction works. Time is a one-way, irreversible axis. People who walk on this axis can choose to stop or speed up and run forward, but they cannot go back. From a certain perspective, the past can only be observed, but cannot truly go back to the past. For example, the light emitted by a star tens of thousands of light years away from the Earth takes tens of thousands of years. It takes time to reach the Earth. Therefore, what people on the Earth see with the naked eye is actually what the star looked like tens of thousands of years ago. In the same time and space, maybe the star has already declined and collapsed into a star. The dim white dwarf may, of course, have transformed into a supernova, emitting extremely bright light at the other end of the distant universe. Of course, it will take tens of thousands of years for this bright light to be seen by people on Earth. Not to mention the distance, let's just talk about the Sun, the nearest star to the Earth. It takes more than 8 minutes for sunlight to reach the Earth from the Sun. In other words, the Sun that people can see when they look up is actually what it looked like 8 minutes ago. Suppose a group of interstellar terrorists blow up the Sun with a bomb of extremely high yield, huge enough to destroy the star. It will take 8 minutes for people on the Earth to see the end of the world. The past can only be seen, not reached. If a person can really go back in time, then any tiny move he makes will be enough to trigger a series of paradoxes like the butterfly effect. It is no exaggeration to say that the entire universe may even be destroyed because of this time traveler. There is no way that this engineering ship that escaped the solar system could go back tens of thousands of years and become the ship that was soaked in the magma pool. Agunakota. Kaylan squatted down, put his hands together into fists, and pressed them tightly against his forehead. He felt that his mind was in chaos. This memory contained a lot of vital clues, but these clues were connected together, and in the end it points to one paradox after another. It was something that couldn't happen, but it happened. Alpha Star N45 Airspace, Yagonactor Parking Point. Fleet 0, Betelgeuse Heavy Cruiser, Pilot Lounge. Colonel Yeager was lying comfortably on the soft imitation leather sofa. Lieutenant Colonel Hans beside him was holding a cup of steaming coffee, lowering his head and staring at the tablet computer placed on the coffee table, browsing the internal network. Some information on. Hans, I'm just wondering, why can you drink such terrible coffee? Yeager crumpled the napkin in his hand and threw it away. He originally wanted to throw it into Hans' coffee cup. But as a result, because Hans was sitting directly opposite the air outlet of the air conditioner, the strong airflow directly blew the napkin ball back and landed at Yeager's feet. Hans, who didn't notice his colleague's prank at all, took a sip of coffee and said to himself, "Does it taste bad? I don't think so. Ask those who have drank the coffee you brewed. Who doesn't say it tastes bad? The best comment I've ever heard is this thing should not be used to drink, but should be used to flush the toilet. Speaking of which, you are also very capable. Even premixed instant coffee can be turned into something even dogs can't drink when you get it," Yeager complained. Of course dogs don't drink coffee. Coffee is very poisonous to dogs. Hans's fingers quickly slid across the screen of the tablet, and one message after another kept scrolling. Speaking of which, there were 2 more cruisers last week. They have been transferred. In total, 6 cruisers and 4 high-speed battleships have been transferred this month. It's normal. The people above just think that we are too idle and don't want to waste precious combat power here. Besides, now that the Ark has encountered such a big change, it is normal to send more warships back. Besides, those who participated in the exploration didn't. The Yagonactor Consortium send out many empty ships to fill the vacancies, Yeager said disapprovingly. That's a civilian airship. With that kind of armament, it can't be considered a combat power at all. Hans frowned. Since this morning, his right eye has been twitching, which makes him he had a very uneasy feeling. He remembered that a Chinese officer in the army seemed to have said, "What does a twitching of the left eye mean, and what does a twitching of the right eye mean? It seems that one is a disaster, one is wealth." But Hans himself couldn't remember which eye meant disaster and which eye meant wealth, not to mention that this was just a superstitious statement. Unless he could find a sum of money on the ground today, he would believe it. What kind of combat power? Do we need combat power? From its establishment to the present, has Fleet 0 ever participated in a battle, except for the mad woman in the previous research institute who caused trouble? Yeager shrugged and stood up from the sofa. I took out a large bag of potato chips from the corner and tore it open with a squeaking sound. These two pilots were none other than the two transport plane pilots who had dealt with Kaylan several times before. Thanks to Kaylan, not only were they not held accountable, but they were promoted all the way up, even though they had no experience at all. After achieving great military exploits, his superiors found a bunch of inexplicable reasons to promote him several levels in a row. Their military ranks also changed from captain and lieutenant to colonel and lieutenant colonel, and became the captain and deputy captain of the air combat unit of the Betelgeuse heavy cruiser. But I always feel dash. Before Hans finished speaking, the air conditioner that was blowing cold air suddenly turned off. Then, the lights in the lounge also went out. Along with the piercing siren, the dark red emergency light embedded in the corner flashed. One by one the lights lit up. What's going on? Yeager jumped up from the sofa, reached out and grabbed the uniform hanging on the back of the sofa. He was about to put his arms into the sleeves, but after thinking about it, he threw the uniform aside. Hans, you go change clothes first, and I'll go to the hangar first. I just flew over this morning, so the combat uniform should still be in the cockpit. Okay. Hans drank the coffee in the cup and stuffed the tablet into his bag. A second before inserting the tablet, Hans noticed that the tablet's signal bar returned to 0, and the pictures that had not yet been loaded below were spinning in circles. At this moment, a pilot from the air combat unit opened the door of the lounge and stumbled in. Colonel Yeager. Lieutenant Colonel Hans. Level 1 combat readiness. It's level 1 combat readiness. Captain, I want you to go to the hangar and stand by immediately. What happened? Who is the enemy? Don't worry, tell me clearly, Yeager said loudly. I don't know yet. But the airspace where the fleet is located was suddenly hit by a high-intensity electromagnetic interference attack. All communication equipment was unusable, and even the radar was paralyzed, the pilot said anxiously. Electromagnetic interference attack. Yeager and Hans looked at each other. The airspace where Yagonactor was parked had been carefully surveyed in advance. There were no traces of Alpha civilization, so electromagnetic interference could not come from. There are not many things in the ruins, and among the indigenous creatures on Alpha Planet, there are not many powerful beings that can completely paralyze the communications and radar of the entire fleet. Even if there are, targets like this have already been surrounded by peripheral enemies before they get close. Discovered by the reconnaissance team. The anchorage point of Yagonactor is not far from the Ark. If even this place can be attacked by indigenous creatures, then the Ark can be considered to be in danger. It can't be an indigenous creature. Hans shook his head. We are in big trouble. It's the rebels, Yeager insisted. Something happened. The two of them followed the pilot who reported the news and rushed out of the corridor. Hans turned around and ran towards the locker room. Yeager, who was only wearing a tight shirt, was frantically pressing his cell phone with no response while heading towards the hangar. Walking away in stride. By the time he arrived at the hangar, half of the Betelgeuse heavy cruiser's air combat force had already been dispatched. When the radar and drones were unavailable and unable to contact any nearby friendly units, the only option was to fighters were dispatched to patrol the nearby airspace. How is the situation now? Yeager pulled over a familiar ground staff member and asked straight to the point. It's hard to say, the ground crew shook his head with a straight face. Apart from interference, the fleet has not been attacked yet. As for the pilots and aircraft sent out, no one has returned yet. So what exactly happened, we don't know. Not sure. Don't be careless. This is a special period now, just treat us as if we are already in a battle. Yeager patted the ground crew on the shoulder. Can my plane take off now? Yes, the routine maintenance was just completed at noon, and the external propellers were refilled with fuel. You said that the problem of the left cannon's insensitive steering has been solved for you, but you should pay attention to the hydraulic lever of the right auxiliary wing. The wear and tear is a bit serious, and the replacement parts have been used up. New parts will not be delivered until at least next week. Do not make a large emergency change of direction, otherwise you may not be able to survive. Got it, help me clear the ejection runway. Yeager took the helmet from the ground crew and ran quickly to his fighter plane. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 848. Yeager's combat uniform was still in the cockpit of the fighter jet. He did not ask anyone else to help him, but took off his shirt and trousers, threw off his shoes, and got in wearing only a pair of shorts. After getting into this one-piece anti-load combat uniform, he skillfully hooked the zipper puller on the back of the suit to a protrusion on the edge of the seat, sat down, and pulled the zipper behind him all the way to the top. Tisk, if I had known, I should have asked the logistics to wash off the combat uniforms immediately after the flight in the morning. An indescribable smell of sweat was squeezed out from the collar, even though the smell of sweat came from himself, but there was still a look of disgust on Yeager's face. After tightening several airtight valves on his limbs and neck, and after a quick check, Yeager pressed the switch on his waist. The air in the combat uniform was instantly evacuated, and the fabric made of special materials clung to him. Skin, he could even feel the thin layer of semi-fluid material filling the interlayer. When Hans comes, tell him I'm leaving first and ask him to follow quickly. After saying this, Yeager put the helmet on his head. The preparation work for the other two aircraft has not been completed yet. The ground crew turned to look at the fighter jets parked in front of the other two catapults and said, "It will take at least 10 minutes. If you dispatch now, Colonel, you will have to without wingman support. It's just a reconnaissance mission. There's no need to fight. It's not a big problem if you don't have wingman." With a crackling sound, Yeager turned on a bunch of switches on the fighter's control panel, and the view from the external monitor was directly projected onto the helmet. On the inside, the middle covers of the left and right footrests slide up, revealing a hatch. The folding joystick rises from this hatch and is fixed at the height and angle that is most convenient for Yeager. Although Yeager said that he would not encounter combat, he still asked the ground crew, have the weapon bays been replaced with live ammunition? In the morning, he was only flying this fighter jet on a routine cruise mission, and he was also leading a few new recruits in the team. All the fighter jets were equipped with training bombs, although strictly speaking, this thing can kill people, but it is limited to unarmored targets without any protective equipment. When facing indigenous creatures or military vehicles, training bombs are of no use except for scraping the opponent. They have all been replaced with live ammunition. The ground crew's face looked a little ugly. It was the captain's order. Tisk, it seems that the old guy also knows that this time the trouble will not be trivial. Okay, hand over the timing of starting the catapult to me, and we will take off in 10 seconds. After Yeager stared at an indicator light inside the mask that turned from red to yellow, he pressed the ejection button without hesitation. The 10-second countdown ended quickly, and the yellow indicator light jumped to green. At the same time, a huge thrust came from the tail of the fighter jet. Yeager Novikov, RV-003S Raven class high-speed fighter, attack. The Raven class, whose whole body was painted almost black in dark green, accelerated from standstill to a speed of nearly Mach 2.5 in just 1 second. Like a sharp arrow leaving the string, it shot from Betelgeuse. The heavy cruiser's bottom hatch flew out. The number printed on Yeager's Raven is 003S, the S at the end of the number represents the captain's aircraft, and the two numbers 001 and 002 belong to the first two officers of this air combat unit. Commander. While flying, Yeager quickly checked various parameters of the fighter jet. Since it had just flown once in the morning, many data and settings remained in the same state as the last flight and did not need to be readjusted at all. After leaving Betelgeuse, the communication between the fighter jet and the mothership was disconnected. The earphones were filled with noisy current sound, and the screen used to display the radar image was covered with black and white snowflakes. Occupied. The interference is really strong. Yeager muttered, pushed the joystick, and slowly lowered the altitude of the aircraft. According to the intelligence analyzed by the Betelgeuse CIC, the interference source should be located in the southeast of Fleet 0, and the estimated distance should be in the range of 80 to 220 kilometers, but the weather today is very good, and this area the visibility in the airspace is extremely high, so CIC officers believe that the source of interference should be on the ground or underground. As if showing off his skills, Yeager lowered the fighter jet to an altitude of 50 meters, flying close to the ground at an ultra-low altitude. Although the speed of the fighter jet had dropped to Mach 0.75, when converted into seconds, it was still 10 seconds per second. 255 meters, as long as the nose of the plane is lowered a little, or the terrain in front is slightly higher, the entire fighter jet may crash into the ground. Only experienced ace pilots like Yeager dare to carry out such long-distance ultra-low altitude flights. Yeager stared at the ground below through several monitors at the bottom of the fighter jet. At the same time, the intelligent program in the computer was scanning and analyzing the images over and over again. Compared to human eyes, computers even it is possible to find enemies hidden under camouflage in a few frames. Locked frames appeared on the screen one after another, and then disappeared one after another. Most of these suspicious targets were stones, vegetation and the like, and were quickly eliminated by the computer. Yeager had already flown back and forth in the designated area, but found nothing. On the way back, he also encountered several friendly fighter jets that also belonged to Fleet 0 and were sent out to perform reconnaissance missions. However, it was obvious that these friendly fighter jets also found nothing. Yeager pressed the trigger of the machine gun with some irritation and fired at the ground. However, apart from stirring up a burst of sand and dust, the only result was to blow up a beetle-like indigenous creature hiding under a rock. Is the CIC's information wrong? Is it the wrong direction or wrong distance? Or is the source of interference located deep underground? Yeager thought to himself, and suddenly, he felt an unexplained feeling of palpitations. He subconsciously looked up. For some reason, he always felt that the sky above his head seemed a little unnatural. Out of caution, he tried to launch a small unguided missile upwards, and the missile's wake drew a straight upward white line in the sky. Just when the missile reached an altitude of about 4,000 meters, it was blocked by a light curtain that suddenly appeared and exploded. Immediately afterwards, with a distortion of light, a completely black warship without any logos or emblems on the hull, not even the hull number, emerged in the sky. Is it the optical camouflage technology of Alpha civilization? Yeager was stunned. ARC has not yet mastered this technology. The biggest difficulty lies in how to distort the light to make the covering object appear invisible. If optical camouflage armor like that used on vehicles is equipped on a battleship, even if the surface of the battleship can show the color of the sky, the light blocked by the hull will still leave a sizable shadow on the ground. The optical camouflage technology of Alpha civilization allows light to circle the warship. Except for some abnormalities found when observing at close range, there are almost no flaws. Although Yeager had been mentally prepared for a long time, what happened next still made him freeze in the driver's seat. If the warning of danger, imminent touchdown suddenly sounded in his ears, he would have been his soul was brought back, and it is estimated that he has crashed and died in a state of confusion. What emerged in the sky was not just a battleship, but a complete fleet, a fleet that could fully meet the class's standard. Note, the definition criteria of ARC's class of fleet are mentioned in the notes of chapter 763. If you have no idea about this, you can go back and take a look. All the battleships in this fleet were the same as the first one that Yeager saw. They were all painted in pitch black without any markings or numbers. Even the flagship aircraft carrier battleship with a length of more than a kilometer was the same. Yeager only knew that it was an aircraft carrier battleship, but he had no idea of the battleship's class and model. In his memory, there had never been such an aircraft carrier battleship in the ARC Air Force fleet. Building an aircraft carrier battleship is a large project that requires the collaboration of multiple official and private forces, a large investment of manpower and resources, and a long construction time. Not to mention anything else, just the people involved in the project, up to the chief designer, from welding workers to even handymen who clean the factory or cook for other workers. There are tens of thousands of people in total. Unlike the old era, in this era, the construction of aircraft carriers and battleships is not done at all. It's possible to keep it completely confidential. Even civilians, as long as they are a little bit attentive, can usually tell the number of ARC Air Force fleets and the names of their flagships. As for those fanatical military fans, they can even tell the basics of these aircraft carriers and battleships like a treasure trove. In terms of parameters, aircraft carrier battleships are just like the maritime aircraft carriers of the old era. Their strategic significance is far greater than their tactical significance. Yeager is not a civilian, he is a veteran soldier who has served for more than 10 years, and is also a member of the Air Force fleet, but even he does not know when ARC gained such a black aircraft carrier battleship. But Yeager firmly believes that this aircraft carrier battleship is definitely built by ARC. The design of the hull is completely in the style of human civilization, and its appearance is similar to the aircraft carrier battleships currently in service in major fleets, and those that are mixed in the wilderness. The exiles on board could not even solve the problem of food and clothing. It was absolutely impossible for them to build such a behemoth. Not to mention aircraft carriers and battleships, any empty ship cannot be built by the exiles. Even when the heretical sect was still there, they had never owned even one empty ship. Where did this aircraft carrier battleship come from? No. I should say, where did this entire fleet come from? Yeager couldn't help but think of the warships that had been transferred some time ago, but he didn't find any familiar warships in this fleet. Even if those warships had been modified and had their paint changed, he still couldn't help but think of them. It can be seen at a glance, but in this black fleet, they are all new models of warships that have never appeared in the archives. Yeager took a deep breath and tried to calm down his mood as much as possible. He held the joystick tightly with both hands and moved the fighter as close to the ground as possible. He had no intention of launching an attack on this fleet at all. His mission was just reconnaissance. Now that the goal has been achieved, the top priority is to return to the mothership immediately and report the matter to the captain. But then again, as long as the officers and soldiers on the fleet were not blind, they should have seen this black fleet with its optical camouflage removed. The weapons of the Raven class cannot penetrate the shields of these battleships at all, but the anti-aircraft weapons of these battleships can restore the Raven class and the pilot Yeager to the original state of matter in half a second. Even if Yeager launches a surprise attack on this black fleet with the determination to die, it will be meaningless. He couldn't even delay the other party for even a second. Damn, I guessed it was the rebels, but I never would have guessed that the rebels would actually have a class of fleet that has never been seen before. Could I be dreaming? Yeager wanted to pinch himself, but at this flying altitude, he didn't dare to move his hands away from the joystick. Although this fleet has not yet launched an attack, it first conducted radio interference, and then came so close under disguise. It is obvious that it is definitely not a friendly force, and with the combat effectiveness of Fleet Zero, I am afraid that this sudden attack will not be possible. The opponent of the Black Fleet that has emerged. Yeager quickly analyzed the current situation in his mind. No, although Fleet Zero is somewhat short of combat power, we still have that ancient battleship, that Agunathor. As long as that thing joins the fight, we can't lose. Yeager flew towards the mothership while observing the situation in the sky. Even though Fleet Zero and the mysterious Black Fleet had discovered each other, and both sides had entered each other's attack range, neither side was able to without taking the lead in firing. The situation maintained a delicate balance. Yeager knew that the current mood and thoughts of the commander of Fleet Zero and the captains of each ship must be very different from his own. No one knew what to do with this fleet of unknown origins opposite him. Under this strong interference, it was even impossible to communicate with the other party. But the Black Fleet is still slowly approaching Fleet Zero and Agunathor. This delicate balance cannot be maintained forever, and it will soon be broken. Jaeger gritted his teeth, sweat dripping from his forehead and neck, dripping inside the helmet. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 849. The Black Fleet has been driving until it is only 20 kilometers away from Fleet Zero. This is basically the final warning line. According to the regulations of the Ark Fleet, if a non-friendly target enters the fleet-stationed area without permission, within 20 kilometers, the captain of each ship has the right to decide whether to fire. This is also to prevent the command center from being interfered with and the order not being conveyed in time, resulting in delaying the fighter plane. The distance of 20,000 meters is quite close for a battleship, and the plasma emitted by the plasma cannon can only span 20,000 meters. It's just a blink of an eye. As soon as Jaeger approached his mothership Betelgeuse, he saw another Raven-class high-speed fighter numbered 017 flying out of the hangar of the mothership. That's Hans's phone number. Hans was not flying very fast. When he was heading towards Jaeger, the signal light on the nose of the aircraft flashed rhythmically several times. That was the signal to apply for laser communication. Jaeger released the joystick and switched the fighter to hover mode. A red communication laser shot out and connected to the opponent's receiver. The situation is worse than we expected, Hans said straight to the point. To use the Chinese proverb, it means that those who come are not good, and those who are good will not come. What did the captain say? Jaeger asked. Hans had obviously communicated with the captain of Betelgeuse before dispatching so late. The captain said that you should never take the initiative to fire unless it is absolutely necessary. Once you fight at this distance, even if you can win, it will be a miserable victory, Hans said. Captain, isn't it possible that he is confused? The other party has already opened the interference field and pushed it in our faces. Is there still a possibility of peace talks? Yegel frowned. The main engine of the Night Owl-class high-speed fighter is powered by energy crystals, and the external propeller consumes almost no fuel. As for ammunition, except for the hundreds of cannon shells used to strip the ground and the one that will destroy the Black Fleet, except for the unguided missiles that were exploded, there was basically no loss. Jaeger simply did not plan to return to the hangar for supplies. He stayed outside so that he could react faster if the situation changed. I have something to explain to you here. I have written about the term missile before, and then some readers asked me in the comments if I was from the other side of the island. I didn't react at first, but then I checked online and found out that it turns out that missiles are called missiles here on the island, and missiles are called missiles on the other side of the island. I would like to make a solemn statement that the author is not from there. As for why the missiles in the article refer to it is a weapon that uses a rocket thruster to drive the warhead, a rocket without a guidance system, and is similar to an RPG. Inside Yagunactor, forward supply base. What? An unknown fleet. And there's an unidentified aircraft carrier and battleship, Hound, who was too busy with work and didn't have time to have lunch until 3 in the afternoon, put aside most of the box lunch in his hand. He jumped down from the chair with eyes as wide as copper bells. He held the table with one hand, turned over from behind the table and jumped to the front of the table. He grabbed the shoulder of Jolajita, who ran in to report, "What's going on?" 4.5 minutes ago, Fleet Zero reported that a radio interference field enveloped the entire airspace, and all communications and radars were affected. It sent fighter jets to conduct reconnaissance in the direction of the estimated interference source. As a result, a Raven, a missile casually launched by the class, exploded an approaching stealth fleet. If the pilot of this Raven class hadn't discovered the anomaly, I'm afraid the opponent would have already arrived right under our noses. What now? Is there a fight? Hound asked. Not yet. External airspace, the station of Fleet Zero. More than a dozen cruisers are lined up in a row, their energy shields are fully deployed, and various medium and long-range weapons are ready to go. As long as this black fleet comes closer than half a kilometer, a fierce exchange of fire will immediately break out between the two sides. It seems that the battle is unavoidable. Yeager sighed, and suddenly lowered his voice a little. Hans, when you find an opportunity later, you can retreat to the back, and then find an opportunity to get away from the battlefield. Anyway, all radio communications have been cut off now. You can make up whatever reasons you want after the war, and those guys probably won't hold you accountable. What are you talking about? Hans' somewhat annoyed voice sounded in the one-to-one laser communication channel. I have observed the configuration of this black fleet at close range. Not only are the number and level of battleships much stronger than ours, but the level of battleships also stabilizes our head. If the big guy at the rear cannot join the battle, we will fight no win. Yeager did not say the remaining half of the sentence. Even if Yagonactor joined the battle, Fleet Zero would have suffered heavy losses before that. Once the war begins, at least half of the tens of thousands of officers and soldiers in Fleet Zero will die here. Hans fell silent, and the communication channel fell into silence. Yeager thought he had successfully persuaded Hans, and continued to persuade. A fleet battle of this level is all about naval gunfire. Whose energy shield collapses first and armor is penetrated first? Don't say anything. Our old-fashioned fighter jets, even the cutting-edge variable flying mechas, can't play any role in this kind of battle, and they can only serve as cannon fodder. Then why don't you run? Hans asked. I am the captain of the air combat unit of Beetlejuice. If I run away, who will direct the others to fight? Besides, didn't you just get married last month? I remember your wife was just pregnant, right? Do you want you to will the child be born without a father? Yeager asked. Stop talking, Hans said decisively. I will not be a deserter. If you say anything again, I will report it to the captain. Hans, who was sitting in the cockpit, glanced at his old partner's plane 300 meters away with complicated eyes. He knew Yeager was doing it for his own good, but this incident still broke his bottom line. If it doesn't work, the only option is to put Yeager in a solitary room. As long as Beetlejuice is not sunk, Yeager will most likely not be in danger of life. As for the post-war military court trial, at least it will not be possible. Will be sentenced to death 100%. This matter can be big or small. At the most minor level, it could be considered as issuing wrong instructions to subordinates, and if it fails, you will be dismissed. At the most serious level, if it is regarded as inciting mutiny, it will probably be more troublesome. But no matter what the situation is, it is better than driving the Raven class towards the Black Fleet on the opposite side. Yeager is right. In this scale of combat effectiveness, these air combat troops are just cannon fodder. Even if the opponent's warships turn off their energy shields, Raven-class weapons cannot penetrate the physical armor of these warships. At this moment, the aircraft carrier battleship headed by the Black Fleet suddenly fired a series of colorful flares into the air. This is... Yeager glanced at these flares and was stunned. This is a communication method invented by the ARC military. When radio, sound wave, and laser communication are all unavailable, and semaphores or other communication methods are also restricted, signal flares can be used to communicate with distant friendly forces. A single color flare can mean attack or retreat, and multiple flares of different colors can also be used to piece together some short words and sentences. What this sentence means is... Yeager murmured as he looked at the colorful signal flares in the sky. In our next actions, if Fleet Zero chooses not to intervene, we will not launch an attack on Fleet Zero. Hans continued Yeager's words. He especially liked it during his business time. When studying this kind of thing, it is natural to read the meaning of the signal flare faster than Yeager. Next action? Let us not interfere. Yeager looked at the Black Fleet, and then he suddenly looked back as if he remembered something. I understand. Their target is not us, but it's the big guy we're guarding. This Black Fleet is coming towards Yagonactor. The next second, Fleet Zero launched an attack on the Black Fleet first. The intention of the other party is very obvious, and the purpose of Fleet Zero since its birth is to protect Agunakotair. Naturally, the commander of the fleet cannot take Agunakotair just because his own fleet is weaker than the other party. You will be handed over to this fleet with mysterious identity and unknown origin. Quickly retreat. Get behind the mothership. Be prepared to withstand the impact, the experienced Jaeger immediately shouted in the team channel. At the same time, he pushed the joystick fiercely and flew the Raven fighter towards the tail of Betelgeuse. However, due to communication interference, only Hans heard his instructions. As for the other fighter jets, they were still hovering around Betelgeuse blankly. Most of the pilots flying these fighter jets were rookies who had just graduated from the Air Force Military Academy. They had just been added to the Zero fleet not long ago. Not to mention combat experience, they even had very few flying hours. Just when these recruits didn't know what to do because they couldn't receive orders from their superiors, the Black Fleet's counterattack has arrived. More than 50% of the fighter jets were directly evaporated, and the remaining few lucky ones were swept in by the airwaves in the aftermath of the explosion, lost their balance, and hit the energy shield of a friendly warship, turning into a firework blooming in mid-air. In the first round of bombardment, the air combat unit of the Betelgeuse cruiser, except for the two captains and deputy captains Jaeger and Hans, the rest of the fighter jets were completely wiped out. Alas, Jaeger punched the armrest of the seat angrily. He and Hans hid behind the butt of the battleship to avoid this wave of counterattack, and those rookies who lost their lives had no idea at all. In this kind of battleship battle, how insignificant is one's own fighter jet? There is no energy shield, the armor is light, and the firepower is weak. The air combat troops deployed on the battleship are only used to perform low-intensity tasks such as reconnaissance or clearing out a small number of indigenous creatures on the ground. On this battlefield, their existence is simply insignificant. The reason why the aircraft carriers of the Navy in the old era were deterrent was because the nuclear warheads carried by the carrier-based aircraft had long-range destructive strike capabilities. A fighter jet with a length of more than 20 meters and a combat weight of only 20 to 30 tons carried weapons. It was enough to level a metropolis with hundreds or even tens of millions of people. This extreme imbalance between spears and shields disappeared after the discovery of energy shields. A military expert on the Ark said that if a modern war breaks out between humans now, it is likely to become a war of attrition on the energy level. The weapons of both sides blast each other's energy shields, which the one whose energy shield is the first to be unable to withstand the bombardment will be defeated. Because of the rebalancing of offensive and defensive forces, the combat mode has become more primitive compared to the middle and late periods of the old era. It was like returning to the cold weapon era overnight. The Raven class driven by Jaeger and others is equivalent to the most worthless militiamen in the cold weapon era: no armor, no mounts, and the weapons are only wooden spears and short bows with extremely weak penetrating power. And those knights who were called iron cans, even if they stood still and let the militiamen chop them down, the militiamen's weapons could not cause any harm to the knights through the plate armor. If you want to kill a knight, you only need heavy lances and full metal warhammers in the hands of the enemy knights, or large killing weapons like crossbows and trebuchets. Yegel, are we going to join the battle? Hans asked. Although he had just stated firmly that he would not be a deserter, after witnessing the tragic situation of other fighters, he still felt a little shaken in his heart. Jaeger was right. If they stayed on this battlefield, they could do nothing but throw away their lives meaninglessly. Moreover, without radio communication with the mothership, they could not obtain command from the mothership at any time on the battlefield. Everything could only rely on their own judgment. In this way, the risk factor will increase exponentially. Not only must they avoid enemy firepower, but they must also always be alert to indiscriminate attacks from behind. Our warships will not stop attacking just because friendly fighter jets are within the attack range. Let's wait and see first. Before Jaeger finished speaking, a dense black shadow rushed out from the black battleship. Jaeger quickly recognized them. They were enemy remote-controlled drones, and each drone carried a large number of crystal energy bombs. These drones have only one purpose, which is to hit the battleship's energy shield. It seems we will have something to do soon, Yeager sighed. Although he didn't know how the other party controlled the drones in the case of severe interference, since these things came out, their air combat troops must be responsible for dealing with them. The close-in defense guns of the battleships can indeed clean up these things. Self-destructing drones, but if close-range defense cannons want to mow down these drones, they must first turn off their own energy shield. P.S. Thanks to Sopu for the 1,500 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 850. Everyone is here, be careful, these drones must not be allowed to get close to the shields of our battleships. Yeager was stunned for a moment after reflexively shouting the sentence. He suddenly realized, apart from himself and Hans, there are no survivors in the Betelgeuse air combat force. The number of drones is 6,000, no, 8,000, or even more, Hans said, although there are still some remaining air combat units on other warships. With our little combat power, we can't. It's impossible to get rid of these drones. As much as you can knock it off, Yeager said through gritted teeth. Drones carrying crystal energy bombs are actually a kind of bargaining chip. If the attack and defense capabilities of both fleets are quantified, it is equivalent to a constantly floating scale, and the existence of these drones is equivalent to a large number of weights were added to one side of the scale. Yeager made a rough estimate. From the appearance point of view, these drones should be modifications of the Tusk II. The other party seemed to have cancelled the 25mm caliber aircraft originally carried by the Tusk II cannon and 2 laser-guided missiles, allocating the entire load to the crystal energy bomb used to launch a self-destruction attack. In this way, the yield of the crystal energy bomb carried by this improved model is equivalent to the Tusk Type II about 5 times. However, the explosive power and mass of crystal energy bombs cannot be calculated according to a linear increase method, but a geometric growth data model. The greater the total mass of the bomb, the more terrifying the destructive power produced by resonance, according to the best worst-case scenario estimate. As long as about 500 of these 8,000 drones can break through the interception of the air combat troops and successfully reach the self-destruction position, it will be enough to explode the energy shields of the Zero Fleet ships. At that time, as long as the Black Fleet's main gun fires a salvo, it will be able to directly defeat the Zero Fleet's formation. If a few dozen drones are missed, the shield can barely hold it, but if a large one is missed, the destructive power of the crystal energy bomb will be doubled under the resonance blessing. I just calculated it, 70 is almost the limit that the Rigel Lian shield can withstand. Beyond this number, the shield's self-recovery speed will not be able to keep up with the consumption speed, Yeager said. He did not mention other friendly warships. There were not many remaining air combat units on each ship. In this situation, they could only choose to clean up their own troubles and ensure the safety of their respective motherships as much as possible. The computer's combat program quickly analyzed the battlefield situation. The Betelgeuse heavy cruiser was lucky. There were only about 200 drones targeting it. As for the one under the greatest pressure, it was Fleet Zero's. The number 2 flagship is the Gangfeng-class aircraft carrier battleship New Dawn. Nearly half of the self-destructing drones pounced on the New Dawn. Hans, what's your highest record for shooting moving targets? I remember your shooting skills are much better than mine, Yeager asked in the laser communication. 3 minutes and 197 minutes, Hans replied. Is your result for shooting with all weapons? What about the hit rate? Yeager asked again. 67%. For the pilots of high-speed fighter jets, a hit rate of more than 30% when shooting moving targets is considered very high, and a hit rate of 67%, this is already the level of ace. So high? Then why didn't I see you participate in the military competition organized by the military a few years ago? I participated, but those kind of army-wide competitions are monsters. I didn't even pass the preliminaries, So of course you couldn't see me, Hans said. I felt it was embarrassing later, so I didn't tell you. Lie, you said I was going on annual vacation. Then I hope you can break your highest record this time. Yeager said, suddenly changing the subject. The frequency of shelling has been reduced. Prepare. Taking advantage of the short recharging interval after the naval guns of both sides exchanged fire, Yeager and Hans directly raised the fighter jets to an airspace nearly a kilometer higher than the hovering height of the fleet, and aimed at them with cluster lasers and cannons. A swarm of drones came from below and strafed. These drones, carrying a large number of crystal energy bombs, are not very fast, and they do not have any armor protection. They are not much different from the moving targets in live ammunition training. Moreover, every time a drone is exploded, the crystal energy bomb that was killed it can always involve the surrounding drones. In the blink of an eye, half of the 70 drones locked on Betelgeuse have been shot down. It seems you are really not bragging, Yeager sighed. Most of these kills were Hans's record, and his record was only a fraction of Hans's. Yeager's strength lies in driving skills rather than shooting. This is one of the reasons why when the two of them work together, he is often the main driver and Hans is the co-pilot and part-time gunner. In this way, the strengths and weaknesses of the two are clearly understood. Just complemented each other. But now, after the two of them switched to a single-seat high-speed fighter, their shortcomings were somewhat exposed. While talking, the two of them took care of the remaining 30 or so drones. The reason why Yeager and the others faced so few drones was because most of the pressure was transferred to the actual flagship of the Zero Fleet, the New Dawn. The New Dawn had the most remaining fighter jets, and the ship is also equipped with dozens of cutting-edge variable flying mechas, but despite this, the pilots of the New Dawn Air Combat Unit are still forced to use their own aircraft to hit drones and these cheap weapons. The point of perishing together. Can't we use EMP bombs? Yeager looked at the dense group of drones below. Faced with such a dense array of drones, shouldn't EMP bombs be the first choice? It has been used, but it has no effect, Hans sighed. A drone that can operate normally in such a strong electromagnetic interference field must be equipped with some alien civilization technology that we don't know about. At this moment, a communication laser was fired from the two men's mothership Betelgeuse and shown on Yeager's plane. Colonel Yeager, the captain requires you to lead the remaining troops and immediately support No. 2 flagship New Dawn, intercept the enemy drone swarm. The air combat units belonging to other battleships seem to have received the same order, and they all turned their firepower towards the drone group that was about to surround the New Dawn. But the fire suppression only lasted less than 20 seconds, and several fighter jets were hit by long-range sniper fire. They were too far away from their mothership, and there was nothing in this airspace that could be used as a bunker. While the pilots of these fighter jets used their drones as moving targets, the warships of the Black Fleet also used their aircraft as moving targets. No, the enemy has already noticed us, Yeager said to Hans. If we continue to stay at this height, we will be shot down sooner or later. Then what are you going to do? Hans asked rhetorically. If we continue to rise, the drone swarm will exceed our attack range. If we shrink back behind the battleship, our own battleship will block the firing range of the weapons. Let's rush to the front of the drone swarm. Use those drones as bunkers, Yeager said immediately. The enemy will never use naval guns to bombard their own drones just for us little shrimps. Even if the other party really does this, Fleet Zero will still make a profit, at the cost of a few fighter jets and a few pilots. Let the other party deal with the troublesome drone group by themselves. This deal is a sure profit. Of course, this profit refers to the overall situation, but for individual pilots, they have become the abandoned son who was sacrificed. But Yeager knew very well that the other party would never do this unless the commander of the Black Fleet was an idiot. If the other party really did this, then at least his sacrifice would be valuable. Probably, he would be awarded a Silver Wing medal posthumously after the war, right? You want to start a dogfight with a swarm of drones? Hans was stunned for a moment. Are you crazy? As long as you control the distance, there will be no danger, as he said that. Jaeger had already pressed the control lever, and his Raven immediately dived down, getting into the drone group and the new Dawn, the gap area between the numbers. The core module of the Bavar laser cannon has overheated in the battle just now. It will take at least 30 minutes to cool down on its own without returning to the mothership for replacement. Fortunately, the cannon shells can also target these drones. Inflicting a fatal blow, the lack of a laser cannon only slightly reduced the cleaning efficiency. "Leave this to me," Jaeger said through laser communication to two nearby friendly fighter jets that were emitting black smoke. These are two Viren-class fighters, which are top-notch fighters that only aircraft carrier battleships are qualified to equipment. However, under the double blow of the aftermath of enemy naval guns and the impact of drone explosions, the two Vayrons were severely damaged and were on the verge of disintegrating and crashing at any time. Fortunately, these were two Dragon-class aircraft. If it had been replaced by a Raven-class aircraft driven by Jaeger, it would have lost its combat capability with this level of damage. "Thank you for your support." After replying to Jaeger's communication, the two Vayrons turned around and flew directly to the new Dawn. Not only were their bodies severely damaged, but their propeller fuel and ammunition were also about to run out. If it weren't for Jaeger's timely support, the two Dragon-class pilots would probably have chosen to die together with the drone swarm. Tisk. Yegel glanced at the two broken Vayrons in the rear-view camera with a somewhat envious look. "If I had known, I would have found a way to get that big shot to open a back door for me, and he would have given me two Vayrons as well. Just come up to Rigel, I'll trade my promotion for the chance to open up the Vayron class." "Yeager. Pay attention. Your level." At 10 o'clock, two enemy drones. Hans's voice came from the earphones, followed by a deafening explosion and a blast from the left front. A strong wave of air came. Jaeger quickly grasped the joystick, and several external thrusters on the other side sprayed in the opposite direction at the same time, which restored the balance of the aircraft. Additional setting: all ARC Air Force fighter jets are energy crystal engines, so they have extremely strong endurance, but the external rocket thrusters used to accelerate and improve flexibility still use chemical fuel. Although the fuel exhausts the fighter jet, you can still fly, but your maneuverability and controllability will be greatly affected. Be careful. I noticed that some special models of drones are equipped with optical camouflage devices. However, the performance of these optical camouflage devices is much worse than those used by Black Fleet battleships. As long as you look carefully, you can still see traces of movement. Hans reminded in the communication. "Damn, these guys are so sinister." Yegel suddenly broke into a cold sweat. If Hans hadn't come to his aid in time, he might have been blown to pieces by now. Although the optical camouflage of the drone can be detected by the naked eye if you observe it carefully, you must know that this is a complex battlefield, and the fighter planes are changing rapidly. Who can detect those abnormal distorted lights and shadows at all times? "Hans, you pull back 1 kilometer, provide me with fire support, and focus on attacking those who have slipped through the net. As for the drone group in front, let me deal with it." After Jaeger finished speaking, he controlled the fighter jet. It rushed forward and fired violently from its 4 cannons, smashing an approaching drone into pieces. Boom! The airwaves from the explosion of the crystal energy bomb hit the fighter's porthole, and a red fragment scratched a long scratch on the reinforced resin porthole with a metal film. If Jaeger had been closer than 10 meters, the landline phone was probably going to be caught in the explosion. The safe distance for a single UAV to self-destruct is 120 meters. If there are 2 drones, under the action of resonance, the safe distance needs to be increased to 200 meters, and for 3 drones, it is 400 meters. As for 3, the drones gathered together must keep a distance of more than 1 kilometer from them. Jaeger silently calculated the explosion range of the crystal energy bomb in his mind, while driving the plane around in the air. Scanning with cannons, the barrage continuously intercepted the approaching drones. At the same time, it is located in the core area of the Grey Mist Forest, in the Tower of Babel. Kaylan was immersed in those memory fragments when he suddenly felt a sense of crisis for no reason. Kaylan, whose inner shock had not completely subsided, immediately withdrew his consciousness from these memory fragments and looked around cautiously. Most of the thousands of zombies on this floor have been digested by the living armor, and the rest are blocked by the space barrier and cannot get in. On the other side, Zelo and 33 are also waiting. Logically speaking, I shouldn't feel this inexplicable sense of crisis. Unless, there are other mechanisms in the tower that have been triggered. Could it be that the content of this trial is not limited to these unkillable zombies? Just when Kaylan was about to talk to Zelo and 33, a voice rang in his mind without warning: Agunakota is being attacked. Do you want to fight back? Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 851. In fact, the ancient battleship originally had another name. If read in the language of the Alpha civilization, it was called Eternity. When Kaylan started the battleship console for the first time, the information that poured into his mind included the name. But at that time, Kaylan felt that this name was too middle of the road, and many science fiction works had warships or space stations with this name, so after taking control of the warship, the name was changed to Yagunactor. Although it is more convoluted than the Eternity, at least it is not easy to confuse. Besides, in the files of the Undead Crew Association and the Security Bureau, Agunakota is used as the name of this ancient battleship. Code name, so there is nothing wrong with changing it to this name. After taking control, Kaylan and Yagunactor established a wonderful neural connection, but this connection only activated when Kaylan was inside or near the battleship. Effect, and now, he is in the core of the Grey Mist Forest, 180,000 miles away from Yagunactor. Logically speaking, it is impossible for neural connections to span such a long distance. But he received the message from Yagunactor in the Tower of Babel. Moreover, this message also claimed that Yagunactor is under attack. N-45 Airspace, Combat Zone. After the air combat units of other warships rushed to support, the situation on the New Dawn finally eased slightly. The Veyron-class fighters and variable flying mechas that returned to the mothership for supplies and repairs also returning to the battlefield, Jaeger and Hans suddenly felt that the pressure was greatly reduced. It seems we can take a breather for the time being, Jaeger said. My cannon shells have been completely burned out, and the core module of the laser cannon has also melted due to multiple overheating. Now the weapons can be used on the entire machine. There are only 3 unguided missiles left. If the other side releases another batch of drones, I'm afraid I will have no choice but to fly my plane into them. Betelgeuse is a bit far away from us. If we go back to supply now, I'm afraid it will be affected by the opponent's naval guns. My suggestion is that we directly let the New Dawn be responsible for our supply operations. The current situation is special. I don't think the flagship will refuse our request. Okay, but I'm afraid the flagship doesn't have the spare parts for old-fashioned fighter jets like ours. Yeager sighed. I heard that 2 months ago, all the flagship's carrier-based aircraft were replaced by Veyron-class aircraft. If that doesn't work, let them give us 2 Veyrons. Anyway, the Veyrons and Ravens use the same operating mode. The difference in performance will be something you can quickly get used to after getting started, Hans said. You have a pretty good idea. To be honest, I also want to fly the Veyron class, but I'm afraid there won't be many aircraft left for us, Jaeger continued. Although the number of carrier-based aircraft is generally based on it is equipped with 1.2 to 1.5 times the number of pilots. However, just after the first round of battle, the fighters that returned were seriously damaged and could not be repaired in a short time. The batch they have launched now, the fighter jets, are probably the extra inventory. Hey, good things are reserved for the aces, not us. Although Jaeger and Hans can compete with the ace pilots on the flagship with their qualifications and driving skills, they were transferred from the Ark Guards fleet after all, and they have been in service for more than 10 years. but did not participate in many actual battles. Almost all of the ace pilots deployed on the flagship were transferred back from front-line theaters. According to the old era, the two are equivalent to the Imperial Guards guarding the capital and the Border Guards guarding the border. The former must have the best treatment and equipment, but in terms of combat effectiveness and combat experience, the Border Guards who have withstood the baptism of war all year round the army is definitely not comparable to any inland army. Actual combat and training are different after all. For example, in the battle just now, whenever more than 5 drones broke through the blockade, those aces transferred back from the front line theaters would not hesitate to crash into them. If Yeager was put in the same situation as Hans, they would most likely hesitate, at least not so decisively. Let's go. I'll be thankful that the flagship can help us replenish the propeller fuel and ammunition. If possible, I like them to replace me with a laser module with a higher power. Wait. Just when Yeager and Hans were preparing to go to the hangar of the New Dawn for supplies, dozens of humanoid mechas suddenly flew out of the aircraft carrier battleship of the Black Fleet, and they exceeded the power limit of the flying mechas, flying towards the New Dawn at a fast speed. What is that? A mecha? Or a humanoid one? How can a humanoid mecha fly so fast? Yeager couldn't help but shout. It seems, they have large propellers installed on their backs, but that level of G-force, even if you wear an anti-gravity suit and a deep submersible cockpit, the human body can't withstand it, unless the pilots of these machines all the members are high-level enhanced people, Hans murmured. The officers and soldiers of Fleet Zero were unfamiliar and surprised by these humanoid mechas that suddenly appeared. However, if Hound and others or soldiers who participated in the battle of the ancient Bronze City ruins saw these mechas, they would be shocked to see these mechas at this moment. Call out the name directly. Fallen Angel mass production type. It was the mecha that the undead crew copied based on the Alpha Civilization's Blasphemer mecha. It's not so much a mecha as it is a semi-mechanical, semi-biological cutting-edge weapon, in a semi-awake state. The living CPU is directly bound to the mecha's operating system through neural links, which can not only maximize the performance of the weapon, but also integrate human combat experience and combat instincts with AI operations. It is simply, perfect killing machine. These weapons are stored in cryogenic warehouses during non-war times, and when they need to be used, electric shocks will be used to wake up the living CPUs in deep sleep, but these living CPUs will not be completely when they wake up. Their brains have undergone multiple surgeries and have permanently lost the ability to think for themselves. The only thing that has been preserved is the nerve center responsible for movement. There is one thing that the Undead Crew Association did not tell Kaylan and the others. The living CPU of the Fallen Angel mass production type does not have to be limited to ace pilots. Soldiers who have experienced hundreds of battles, senior relic hunters who have escaped death many times, notorious mercenaries, and even illegal boxers in the underground black market can all be excellent candidates for the living CPU. After all, this thing is not controlled by joysticks and keyboards. The Fallen Angel mecha is more like an extension of human hands and feet. The parts it requires can actually be reduced to a brain and a spine. However, due to the nerve connection, the technology of refuting is not yet perfect, so the torso and limbs of the living CPU are preserved, and are also connected to the body's motion module through electrodes. So fast. 20 seconds, no. We will meet the enemy in 10 seconds, Yeager shouted. I can't lock on these things. Retreat. Let's retreat. His left hand held the control stick tightly, and his right hand crackled and knocked wildly on the control panel. Suddenly, the propeller nozzles under the wings on both sides turned 180 degrees, and tail flames more than 10 meters long were sprayed forward. Came out, pushing the entire Raven-class fighter jet back quickly. But Han's reaction was a bit slow. Although the fixed bracket of the propeller can be adjusted at all angles, actually turning the propeller 180 degrees is an illegal method strictly prohibited in the operation manual. Because Yeager often likes to study some unconventional operations, so he can unlock and change control instructions in just 1 second, but Hans is different. After hearing Yeager telling him to retreat, he had no choice but to turn the plane's nose. He was only 2 or 3 seconds slower than Yeager, and everything was too late. The time it took for those humanoid mechas to break into the blockade of Fleet Zero's air combat troops was not 20 seconds, nor 10 seconds, but only 6 seconds. The back of each Fallen Angel mass production model is equipped with a propeller several times larger than the body. 4 fuel tanks more than 30 meters long are bundled together. High-performance chemical fuel and high-grade energy crystals are provided at the same time. The thrusters provide energy. From the moment they leave the mothership, these aircraft are constantly accelerating. When they rush forward, the actual speed has even exceeded Mach 10. Mach 10, that is, 10 times the speed of sound, can cover a distance of 3,400 meters in 1 second. If this was a fighter jet, the pilot would have passed out due to excessive G-force at this time. But living CPUs will not be comatose, because they are always in a coma. Even if the brain immersed in LCL liquid shuts down due to G-force, the brain of the living CPU will be awakened again through an electric shock. The mass-produced models of fallen angels are disposable consumables, and those who use them will not care about the damage to the living CPU. For such weapons that are equivalent to losses when attacking, users will inevitably find ways to squeeze out all their value. After a mass-produced fallen angel broke into the blocking formation of the Zero Fleet's air combat unit, it threw away the large propeller installed behind it, performed several somersaults in mid-air to resolve the huge inertia, and then pulled out the large propeller hanging on the waist. The heavy armor-piercing sword on the side. Not far in front of this mass-produced fallen angel, there happened to be a Raven-class high-speed fighter that had just completed a U-turn. Due to the first angle of view, Hans did not notice the mecha that rushed in more than 10 meters behind him, but Yeager, who retreated by reversing into the warehouse, saw this scene clearly. He watched helplessly as the headless black mecha raised its arms, and then threw the red-edged sword-shaped weapon in its hand towards Hans's phone. In order to save costs, the mass-produced armor-piercing sword of Fallen Angel does not adopt the same structure as the Blasphemer mecha. There is no energy shield generator or special magnetic field used to restrain the energy shield inside the sword body. It is to simply and crudely heat the nano-alloy sword blade to a high temperature of thousands of degrees, and use this method to improve the cutting ability of the armor-piercing sword. The red sword blade was like a utility knife cutting paper, cutting Hans's plane in half without any hindrance. Hans, who was sitting in the cockpit, didn't even have a chance to eject and parachute, and was hit by the high temperature. The blade was carbonized and turned into fine ash floating in the air. As for the 2 pieces of wreckage of the Raven fighter, they fell straight down and then exploded in mid-air. Hans, seeing his former partner's aircraft transformed into an inconspicuous firework on the battlefield, Yeager's eyes were splitting. He roared loudly and turned the propeller that was originally ejected forward to the rear. At the same time, the power-limiting valve of the energy crystal engine was released, increasing the engine's output power to 300% of the rated power in one breath. Logically speaking, the energy crystal engine of Yeager's plane should have turned into a crystal energy bomb at this time, blowing him and the fighter to pieces, but probably Goddess Luck took another look at him at this time. Even though the screen was full of there were bright red warning texts, but the engine miraculously did not explode and remained in a relatively stable operating condition. The ground crew is really awesome. Yeager knew in his heart that he was still alive entirely because of the ground crew. The ground crew he knew well knew that he liked to play tricks and perform extreme operations, so a lot of tricks have been put into this engine of mine. If we insist on calculating the cost, for the same type of engine, the cost of the engine of our fighter jet is at least 3 times that of other Raven-class engines. Asshole! Die! Give me back Hans' life, Yeager roared, driving the Raven fighter towards the mass-produced fallen angel that shot down Hans. Of course, until at this time, he still didn't know the name of the other party's body. The remaining 3 unguided missiles were all launched and hit the mecha, The mecha's armor was very thick and seemed to be made of pure nano alloy. The unguided missiles did not target it. It caused no real damage other than a few minor scratches. But for Jaeger, these 3 missiles were just a cover. The real missiles were actually the Raven-class fighter he was driving. He tripled the engine power to overload not just for acceleration, but to turn the fighter jet into a high-speed moving crystal energy bomb. I don't believe it, without that large thruster, with the speed of this piece of shit like yours, you can escape. Blood overflowed from the corner of Jaeger's mouth, and the excessive G-force pressed him so hard that he felt like his internal organs seemed to be about to burst, but he still held the joystick tightly and did not relax at all. P.S. Thanks for the 500 starting coins for the generous reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 852. Just when Jaeger's plane was less than 100 meters away from the fallen angel mass-produced mecha and was about to collide with it in the next moment, Jaeger pulled the ejection lever of the cockpit. Under the dual push of preloaded explosives and jet thrusters, the seat under Jaeger and his whole body were instantly ejected from the cockpit. He lowered his head and looked down. What he originally wanted to see was the mysterious mecha that killed Hans was crashed by his own plane, but just when the Raven-class machine's nose was about to hit the mecha, the armor-piercing sword originally thrown by the opponent was in mid-air. It flew back in a circle and penetrated the Raven-class fuselage from bottom to top. If Jaeger hadn't ejected from the cabin, he would have been turned into a piece of scrap metal by now. The Raven-class fighter jet did not directly hit the fallen angel mecha, but exploded 2 meters away from the fallen angel. A faint light curtain lit up on the surface of the fallen angel mecha. With the recoil of the explosion, it suddenly opened a distance of several hundred meters. After catching the flying armor-piercing sword, it turned around and struck down another one. A Veyron-class fighter jet rushed over to support. "Damn it! Damn it!" Jaeger yelled angrily. He knew that this kind of mecha must be equipped with an energy shield, so it is difficult to cause substantial damage to it by long-range attack methods of fighter jets. The only way to do this is the way to kill the opponent is to crash into it, rely on the fighter's own mass and volume to forcefully penetrate the shield, and die together with the opponent. But his plane was detonated in advance by the armor-piercing sword flying back. Although the explosion at this distance was very lethal, it could not break the energy shield. The individual mass of the sputtered metal fragments was too small. The surface layer of the energy shield was already vaporized as soon as it came into contact with it, making it impossible to penetrate the shield. As for the shockwave, not only can it not cause damage to the body, but it can also provide the opponent with the power to perform emergency maneuvers in the air. It sucks, everything sucks. Jaeger pounded the armrest of the ejection seat hard, roared and cried loudly. However, now he was just incompetent and furious. After losing his landline, he could no longer help Hans avenge, so even whether he can survive the next battlefield is still unknown. Even if this mysterious Black Fleet abides by the rules on the battlefield and will not fire on pilots who have parachuted, in this airspace full of stray bullets, explosions, and fragments, there is almost no safe corner. Before ejecting, Jaeger had already seen several parachuting pilots being caught in the aftermath of the explosion, leaving no trace of their bodies. The most correct operation at this time is to adjust the nozzle of the ejection seat, accelerate the descent, leave the combat airspace as soon as possible, and then open the parachute, but Jaeger seemed to have lost the desire to survive. After shouting that he was tired, his eyes closed. He leaned on the back of the chair listlessly, without performing any operations, and let the ejection seat take him to the ground in a free fall. But strangely enough, the shells, lasers and even plasma blasts that came back and forth on the battlefield seemed to have eyes, and they all bypassed this man who had lost his will to live. Jaeger left unscathed. Enter the combat airspace until the height sensing device of the seat senses that it is about to reach the minimum parachute opening height, and automatically releases the parachute. It wasn't until the landline landed on the solid ground and the inflated airbag completely enveloped Jaeger that he came back to his senses. After the filling gas in the airbag was slowly released, Jaeger unbuckled his seat belt, stood up in a daze, raised his head, and looked at the two fleets still engaged in a fierce battle in the sky. From time to time, fighter jets or mechas will be shot down, but these downed vehicles have no chance to fall to the ground intact. They either disintegrate on the spot, or are torn to pieces by the aftermath of various explosions, and finally fall down. There are only scattered fragments of debris that are still burning. Jaeger was able to successfully cross the combat zone and land on the ground, which was indeed a blessing. He looked around, but he did not see any other parachuting pilots on the ground who had successfully landed except himself. Where did this fleet come from? Jaeger wiped the dust on his face and murmured, "It has been more than 10 minutes, why haven't the reinforcements arrived yet?" The station of Fleet Zero, the airspace where Yagonactor is parked, is not far from the Ark. When Jaeger flies a fighter jet on daily patrols, if the clouds are thinner, the huge Ark in the distance can be seen completely. The Ark and Yagonactor, the two are always watching each other. Layout: no matter which side is attacked, the other side can immediately support it. But now, it has been half an hour since the fighting broke out, but not even a single reinforcement has arrived. In half an hour, Jaeger was able to fly his plane back and forth between Ark and Fleet Zero, not to mention the guards fleet stationed over Ark. Even a reconnaissance plane he didn't even see it. Although the external communications of Fleet Zero have been blocked, there is no need to communicate at all in this case. The battle situation here can be discovered by visual inspection alone. If this is the case, then why haven't reinforcements come yet? Was it intercepted by associates of the Black Fleet? Or is it that Ark is also in a tough fight? Thinking of this possibility, Jaeger couldn't help but trembled. When he was fighting just now, he had focused all his attention on the Black Fleet and did not pay attention to the situation in the direction of the Ark. But now, on the ground, but he had lost the broad view from the heights. If Ark is also in crisis at this time, he didn't dare to think about it anymore. Over Noah's Ark, N-47 airspace, guards fleet. Behind the porthole of a high-speed support ship, 7 or 8 heads were crowded. 2 of them held telescopes in their hands and stared intently at the direction of the N-45 airspace. Several others asked various questions beside them. How is the situation now? Is the fighting still going on? Aren't you talking nonsense? The strength of Fleet Zero is not weak. Even if part of its combat power has been diverted away recently, it is still there. To be honest, I always feel that the order issued by the superior this time is very strange. If Fleet Zero is going to rebel, why not just send agents from the Security Bureau to kill the officer who is leading the rebellion? I don't believe it. Without the leader people, the people below still dare to continue to rebel. There is no need to send a fleet to fight, right? Even if the battle can be won, the losses for both sides will not be small. So many precious resources have been wasted, and now it is difficult at this time. The person above must have been kicked in the head by a donkey. You should stop saying a few damn words. I won't be able to hold you back to death. An officer with a lieutenant's collar badge on the side poked the soldier who spoke freely with his elbow. The order from above is down. Chi Zhao, just do it. If you tell us to stand still, then we won't move. The person sent to charge into the battle is not you, so why are you worrying so much? Okay, but Lieutenant, aren't you curious about the origin of that mysterious Black Fleet? I have never heard of such a fleet in the Ark's battle sequence before, the soldier asked again. There are a lot of things you haven't heard of. Although the lieutenant himself was very curious, he still had to put on airs in front of his subordinates. Okay, don't gather here to watch the fun. It's time to just go ahead and do whatever you want. Lieutenant, you forgot, today's patrol mission has been cancelled. Brothers, there is nothing to do now. A corporal holding a telescope said. Wait a minute, guess what I saw? What, when he said this, not to mention the soldiers who didn't have binoculars, even the curiosity of the lieutenant was aroused. Fallen Angel mass-produced models. That Black Fleet is actually equipped with Fallen Angel mass-produced models, and there are quite a lot of them, another sergeant holding a telescope said in a deep voice. Damn it, that thing is not directly under the command of the superiors. How could it be assigned to this mysterious fleet that appeared from nowhere? After hearing the name of the Fallen Angel Mecha, the surrounding soldiers suddenly shouted. Although the Guards fleet also did not participate in the battle at the ruins of the ancient Bronze City, there were several followers on this battleship. Soldiers retreating from the front line. The troops to which these soldiers originally belonged were completely wiped out in the battle, and their troop numbers were also directly cancelled. The military simply placed them in the Guards fleet and incorporated them into the Marine Corps on this high-speed support ship. Regarding the mass-produced Fallen Angel that performed amazingly in the Battle of the Ancient Copper City ruins, these people chatted a lot after dinner, so much so that the two soldiers immediately recognized the Fallen Angel Mecha for the first time they witnessed it with their own eyes. Out. What's so surprising? In my opinion, this fleet is directly under the command of the superiors, that's why you haven't even heard of it, the lieutenant said. Maybe it is built on an island in the Middle Sea. There is a secret shipyard, all of which are equipped with equipment using Alpha Civilization technology. It's just that because of our level, we are not qualified to know about it. Even the Fallen Angel mechas have participated in the battle, this time, they really spent a lot of money, the corporal holding the telescope said, but this machine is really strong. It can kill the fighters of Fleet Zero just like melons and vegetables. It seems that the blockade that the opponent just organized was torn apart in 3 strokes, 5 divided by 2, in other words, if we face this mysterious fleet, what are our chances of winning? After hearing this question, the lieutenant was stunned for a moment. It took him a while to react and kicked the corporal on the butt. What nonsense are you talking about? Those are our friendly forces. How could we confront them? Is this fleet really our friendly forces? As soon as the corporal put down his telescope, it was immediately snatched away by other soldiers. He touched his butt, turned around, and looked at the lieutenant with some worry. The order we received was just to stay put and not carry out any action including support, but the order did not mention at all that that fleet is our friendly force, right? Why don't you understand? How can you write such a clear order? The lieutenant said angrily. But, just yesterday, Fleet Zero was still our friendly force, right? The lieutenant was speechless. He held it for a long time before he said hesitantly, but, aren't they planning a rebellion? Since they want to rebel, they are our enemies. Why did Fleet Zero rebel? There is no reason. Although the situation in Ark is a bit bad now, it is impossible for them to defeat the other fleets by themselves, nor can they survive alone on this planet. What's more, haven't the heretical sects been wiped out? Even if they want to rebel, there will be no force they can rely on, right? Hey, you guy, the lieutenant raised his hand in annoyance, but did not drop it. What's the point of asking these things? When this matter is over, you will naturally know the reason. As for now, I suggest you keep your mouth shut. It doesn't matter if you talk nonsense, don't cause trouble for others, do you understand? In the core area of the Grey Mist Forest, the Tower of Babel. Just when Kaylan was confused to discern the authenticity of this message, a huge holographic projection appeared in front of him without warning. In the projection was the scene of the Black Fleet launching an attack on Fleet Zero. Where did this fleet come from? There is nothing wrong with Fleet Zero and Yagonactor in the image, but this Black Fleet, Kaylan has no idea of its origin. As a member of the Undead Crew Association, Kaylan naturally knows the number of troops Ark has. Perhaps elite squads like the mass-produced Fallen Angels will be hidden, but big guys like the fleet are simply impossible to hide. It's sustainable. The manpower and resources required to build an aircraft carrier battleship are astronomical. With the size of the Ark, this kind of data cannot be concealed. Not to mention Klan, any investor who is relatively sensitive to the market can guess what big moves ARK has made recently based on the changes in the stock market. Not to mention, after the Leviathan incident, although the Undead Crew Association has tried its best to block the news and control the price trend of energy crystals, many people still smelled anomalies and concluded that there was a large-scale energy somewhere. The crystal mining sites were exhausted or an unexpected conclusion occurred, but the articles or opinions published by these people were controlled, so the news did not spread further. This image can't be fake, right? 33 can naturally see the picture in the projection. This is the Zero fleet, yes, but which fleet is fighting them? I think these battleships are very obvious we built it, but in my impression, ARK has never had such an extra fleet. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 853. Chapter 819 Everything is going according to plan. At this time, Hound and others had arrived on Yagonactor's deck through the teleportation device. The first second he saw the mass-produced models of the fallen angels, Hound felt a chill in his heart. He knew Ian's private actions may offend some people in the Undead Crew, but he never expected that the Undead Crew would dispatch such a powerful fleet for revenge. What should we do? Layton's anxiety was palpable. If the Undead Crew is determined to get us, it will be useless even if we destroy this fleet. What's more, given the current situation, I'm afraid that it is only a matter of time before the fleet is completely destroyed. It's a pity that Klan is not here. Jolajitu rubbed his huge fist vigorously. If Klan is here and can activate the Agunakotaur, there is no telling who will win. If Klan were here, the Undead Crew would not attack us at all. Hound interrupted the Mongolian man, but then again, if the Undead Crew just wanted to retaliate, why would they attack Zero? Where is Fleet Number 0? Fleet Number 0 is also the property of ARK. Now because of Alexander, ARK is in a very difficult period, and there is no reason for such internal friction. After all, the mission of Fleet 0 is to protect Yagonactor. Before Layton could finish his words, he got a kick from the Hound on the butt. Idiot. The task of protecting Yagonactor of Fleet 0 is given to them by the Undead Crew. Naturally, the crew can take back the task or simply change the content of the task. Even if Fleet 0 turns the spearhead to attack us, it will be fine. In the absence of Klan, the commander of Fleet 0 has no possibility of disobeying orders. That's true. Then why is this? After being said by the Hound, Layton also reacted and looked at the battlefield in the distance with a puzzled face. Maybe this is a performance. Not knowing what, Zofia also walked to the deck. Just like the ruins of the ancient bronze city, the Undead Crew will know that it is a trap, but still kill 100,000 people. The troops were sent in. That time, their purpose was to cover up the fact that the second batch of replicants were about to expire, but this time. Is Fleet 0 also a force composed of clones? Layton was stunned for a moment. That's not right. Clones can only live until the age of 40, but the officers and soldiers who make up Fleet 0 are all from the elite selected from each army, are either veterans and outstanding technical personnel who are over 40 years old, or young adults in their 20s and 30s. The former must be natural people, while the latter, even if they are replicas, are far away. The useful life is still a long time away, right? That's probably not the reason. Hound shook his head. Why is that? Layton asked. Who are you asking me? The Hound kicked Layton again angrily. Anyway, even the biological part of this big man's skin was very solid and he couldn't feel any pain at all. But then again, I think the eldest lady may be right, the Hound continued. This mysterious black fleet must be coming towards us or Yagonactor, but the Undead Crew met but did not inform Fleet 0 in advance, causing the two fleets to fight now. It is impossible for them to make such a stupid mistake. To be honest, I also feel that this black fleet is acting. But the problem is that the losses of Fleet 0 are real, Layton said urgently. Those that were shot down were not drones. The pilots above didn't even have a chance to parachute. Those are all. They are elites mobilized from various military forces. Do you know how much time and resources it takes to train such a pilot? Find a way to contact the commander of Fleet Zero and ask them to withdraw from the battlefield, Hound said after thinking for a while. What? Zwilligito turned his head and looked at him in surprise. What is the purpose of doing this? It's a test. I want to test whether this mysterious fleet really wants to destroy Fleet Zero, or if it has other agendas. Hound said in a deep voice. In the core area of the Grey Mist Forest, the Babel Tower, the second floor. In addition to the scene of the battle between Fleet Zero and the Black Fleet, Kaylan and the others also saw Hound and others walking onto the deck. Except for Leighton, who was wearing something that looked like a powered armor, several others were wrapped in thick standard military coats. Even Sophia, who always pays attention to clothing, was also wearing a cold-proof jacket that looked a bit bloated. Clothes. The hovering altitude of Yagonactor is 7,500 meters above sea level. Although it is protected by an energy shield, wind, snow, and high-altitude airflow cannot invade the deck, but the temperature of the deck still remains consistent with the outside world. At about -60 degrees Celsius, if you take a glass of water on the deck, it won't take long for ice to break. Although the entrances and exits of the transmission channel are equipped with temperature control devices, they can barely heat a small area to about 0 degrees. After all, high-altitude flying warships do not have exposed decks like ships. Even if they do, then it's also for mechas, not humans. Kaylan tried to focus on the Hounds and the others. The projected image suddenly zoomed in and out as if being dragged by a few invisible fingers. The accuracy of the image was so high that Kaylan could even clearly see the hot breath exhaled by the Hounds when they spoke. A thin layer of white frost condensed on his stubble, and then melted into water droplets and slid down. If Kaylan had doubted the authenticity of this video before, he is now basically certain that this is most likely a real event happening right now. As for how Yagonactor found himself, this is no longer important. There are so many secrets and unexplainable things on this ship that Kaylan has become a little numb. This is probably what it means when there are too many lice, but it doesn't itch. In addition to the images, the projection can also transmit sounds. He can naturally hear the conversation between the Hounds and the others clearly, assuming that he is in Yagonactor at the moment and not in the Tower of Babel, facing the same situation thing. He should make the same choice as Hound. Let the Zero fleet withdraw from the battlefield first. This battle was an inevitable disaster for the officers and soldiers of Fleet Zero. Even if they fought at the last moment, nothing would change at all. Their battles and their sacrifices were actually meaningless. Perhaps in the eyes of the Undead Crew Association, human life is just a number, but to Kaylan, these soldiers are all living lives, and they have their own lives. But as the battlefield blooms in the distance, those inconspicuous fireworks, one after another, life is coming to an abrupt end. Kaylan naturally understands the principle of kindness does not control soldiers, but he will never accept it without necessary sacrifices. These soldiers who died in battle may not know where the enemy they faced came from or what the reason for this battle happened until the moment before death. Watching the Hound contact the fleet commander on the New Dawn through laser communication, Ian's heart suddenly moved. He tried shouting to the projection screen, "Old dog, can you hear my voice?" After he shouted these words, the bodies of the Hounds and others in the picture visibly stiffened, and then several people raised their heads and looked around in surprise. "Who is it? Whose voice is it? Is it Kaylan?" Hound asked in surprise. "Is the person who just made the sound Kaylan?" "It's me," Kaylan replied in the Tower of Babel. "What the hell, where are you now? Have you come back already?" the Hound asked hurriedly. "No. I'm still in the Grey Mist Forest. I have successfully reached the core of the forest and discovered the ruins of an alpha civilization and some unbelievable things. We will talk about these later. You just need to while we were exploring this ruins, we suddenly received news that Yagonactor was under attack. Then we successfully established a connection with Yagonactor, allowing me to directly communicate with Yagonactor. You communicate. Are you still in the ruins of the Grey Mist Forest? Wait, you said that the connection with your Yagonactor can be reached from such a distance. Then can you see the situation on our side? Yes. I can see everything. Kaylan gave a definite answer. That's good, I won't waste my time talking nonsense with you, the hound said with spittle, even though the spittle from his mouth had already frozen into ice before it hit the ground. That mysterious black fleet, I am basically certain that the undead crew will send them here. Those mass-produced fallen angels are clearly indicating their identities. Although I don't know why Fleet Zero did not receive any orders, they have obviously been regarded as abandoned by the crew. Damn it, I'll ask them to withdraw from the battlefield first. Well, since the goal of this fleet is Yagonactor, there is no need for Fleet Zero to make fearless sacrifices, Kaylan said. By the way, can you control a Gonactor remotely? Layton also said, I was originally worried that we couldn't control a Gonactor and would have to be beaten passively. Now that you can control a Gonactor, but if Thor establishes the connection, he should also be able to take control of the battleship, right? I'll give it a try. You go back inside the battleship first. That's the safest place, Kaylan said. Most of the weapons carried on Yagonactor are in a non-usable state, but even if this ancient warship is not equipped with any weapons, it can already be regarded as one based on its mass, volume, and speed. A killer weapon with unparalleled destructive power, Kaylan didn't have to do anything, he just had to drive the battleship directly into the formation of the Black Fleet. Okay. Remember not to show mercy. Since the undead crew will quarrel with us, there is no need for us to hold back. After saying this, the figure of the hound disappeared directly at the entrance of the transmission channel. Then came Layton, Zaligatu, Zofia, and others. The soldiers stationed on the outer deck of Yagonactor also hid inside the battleship after receiving the order from the hound. The huge deck was like an island in the sky. There are only a dozen modular houses left and a material storage yard with several tower cranes. Even the containers that were originally stacked in the storage yard have been transported to Yagonako by the soldiers as soon as possible. Thor's interior. Kaylan once again zoomed out through his mind, and shifted the camera to the battlefield in another direction. After receiving the retreat order issued by the hound in the name of Kaylan, the Zero fleet did not persist much, but moved on the ship. Under the cover of artillery fire, they slowly retreated to the side and rear. The flagship New Dawn was the last one to move. The rear mission and most of the firepower of the enemy fleet were undertaken by this Gangfeng-class aircraft carrier battleship. Something that surprised Kaylan but was not surprising happened. The Black Fleet did not pursue the retreating warships. Even when Fleet Zero showed its intention to withdraw from the battlefield, even the frontal gun firepower was dimly reduced. Some of the mass-produced fallen angels that hunted the Zero Fleet's air combat troops in the combat airspace also retreated back to the Black Fleet's formation. It seems, this is really acting. Who is this scene being played for? Me, Kaylan muttered in his heart. According to the retreat route of Fleet Zero, they will slowly withdraw from the battlefield in two directions, exposing the Agunakotaur that remains stationary in front of the Black Fleet. If this description does not have a sense of picture, you can imagine a zipper. The zipper head remains in the original position. Use your fingers to pinch the fastener teeth above the zipper head and pull it to both sides. The zipper pull is a Gonactor, and the chain teeth that are separated and retreated are the battleships of Fleet Zero. Noah's Ark, Core Area, Secret Room. The feint phase has been successful, and Yagonactor's automatic defense mechanism has been activated. A voice sounded in the darkness, counting the time. The new pope should have climbed to the third level of the Tower of Babel by now. He's on the second floor. I wonder which thing has a greater impact on him than Yagonactor's secret. You seem to have underestimated his mental capacity, another voice said, since he would choose to explore the secrets hidden in the Grey Mist Forest in private, then presumably he must have noticed something. maybe he has already having guessed the truth, we just need a proof. Compared to him, it took us a lot of time to digest the so-called truth. Anyway, everything is still going according to plan, at least there are no deviations so far. But I still don't understand why the fool asked us to implement this plan. The meaning of this, he has never told me. Won't you ask him? I asked, but didn't get any response. The second voice sighed, if he hadn't appeared during the voting, I even suspected that he was still asleep and hadn't woken up. P.S. Thanks to book friend 2022010217162424257 for the 100 starting coins.